So, individuals streaming across the border are not the only scourge of Biden's immigration policies. We have also experienced a flood of drugs, particularly fentanyl, coming across. I'm Sherry Rendell, Affairs Director of State and Local Engagement, and April Babcock, founder of Lost Voices of Fentanyl, has graciously joined me on today's podcast. April, welcome.
Thank you so much, Sherry, for having me on.
We are so privileged to have you come. You lost your son tragically, your son Austin, to fentanyl poisoning in 2019. Will you please share what happened at that time?
Well, Austin, uh, he started at the age of 19, smoking marijuana. I think he was snorting some coke, doing whip. Actually, when he started, it started with marijuana. And then I see how it escalated, but with him, I feel like it happened kind of quick because he started at 19 with marijuana and then he's dead by 25. But I kind of, like I say in all these podcasts I'm on, I can't really pinpoint my son. He was kind of like a drug hopper, like whatever was around that the friends he was hanging out was doing. Like I found out at one point he was doing Xanax here and there. I think he was doing Percocets here and there. He was doing Coke here and there. He was doing marijuana here and there. He was doing whippets here and there. So I think it was whatever was around. And he was young. And when I was in my 20s, I was exactly like him. I was doing what was around with my friends. I'm not condoning it. I'm not saying it's a right thing to do, but people had a chance to recover. People had chances to make mistakes. And now in today's world, you really just don't have that chance. Like, I don't condone illicit drug use. I would suggest no one ever try any drug. But the reality is, lots of people occasionally use drugs. Not everybody suffers with an SUD. The last 2 years of my son's life, I definitely knew he had a substance use disorder. Like, he had a problem. I was trying to talk to him, trying to convince him. I think one thing that really held him back from going to rehab, he was afraid of losing his job because he worked full time. Like, he was a hard worker and he had a good job. He was making decent money. And I think in his mind, first, he wasn't ready to go. I couldn't force him to go, but towards the last 6 months of his life, like, he finally admitted, yes, mom, I know I'm an addict, but he said, I'm going to prove to you and I'm going to do it on my own. It just didn't work. Unfortunately, one night he got the drugs he got and it had a lethal dose of fentanyl. My son didn't ask for fentanyl. He asked for cocaine.
And one of the things that you all talk about in your organization is the deaths from fentanyl are not overdoses, but rather poisonings. Please explain that to listeners so that they understand that.
Yeah, so overdose means there's a safe dose to take. You take too much of a safe dose and it causes death or harm. So, what is the safe dose of any illicit drug? There is zero safe dose of illicit drugs. And then when it comes to illicit fentanyl, a lot of the people, like my son, he had no idea. He thought he was getting cocaine, but then he died from something completely different. What other definition is there of a poisoning? Anytime anyone disguises a harmful substance in anything for another person to consume without their knowledge and it causes death or harm, that is the very definition of a poisoning. This is not pharmaceutical grade fentanyl that cancer patients or severe pain patients get prescribed to them. This is illicit fentanyl coming straight from China into the hands of Mexican drug cartels or drug dealers here in America. And the cartels, they're putting this stuff in 5-gallon drums, mixing it, pressing it into pills. There's no quality control. They have zero knowledge of where this illicit fentanyl is landing. And when it only takes 2 milligrams to kill someone, this is the number one crisis going on in America. I mean, it's when it's the leading cause of death in people 18 to 45, how can anyone say this is not a major crisis? We've had more people die from this than the past 3 wars combined. And the Vietnam War was 10 years long.
Yeah.
Not normal.
I'm so sorry for your loss, and I know
Thank
his
you.
death was the impetus for you starting Lost Voices of Fentanyl. Why was this so important to you?
Well, so when my son first died, like I didn't start my group until 18 months after my son had passed away. I did a lot of praying and I was joining these groups. So after lots of prayer, I mean, God really put on my heart what to do with my grief. And I started the group and I made my group public. And I also made my group, we focus on supply. Some people don't like me because I focus on supply. We all can't do everything, but we all can do something. And this is what I chose to do with my grief. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, my son, if he got what he actually thought he was getting, would have never died that night. And then I started investigating about this illicit fentanyl. I mean, I didn't even know what it was. And then, finding out where it's coming from, China, like China is deliberately killing us, which the China Select Committee just had a hearing in Washington D.C. this past March, pretty much exposing China to the entire world that they are deliberately killing us with fentanyl. There's websites on the dark web for American eyes only, for pharmaceutical labs in China to sell to customers just in America. Precursor chemicals and fentanyl. You can go on the DEA website, and the DEA website explains everything to you, where it's coming from, how it's getting here. And when China went into business with the Mexican cartels, I mean, that made it even way worse than it already was. This has been going on for 11 years. This crisis has been going on for 11 years. And we still have 0 PSAs from our federal government. They leave it to the families, like Lost Voices of Fentanyl. We just paid for our own PSA. I know Families Against Fentanyl, they paid for a PSA. I know there's other PSAs out there, but us grieving families, we should not be forking the bill for this. Our federal government should have done it long ago, but they're not. And whatever they're doing, it's not working and it's not enough. When it's enough is when that death toll drastically declines.
How many individual lives are taken each day by fentanyl poisonings?
About 300. And the CDC, their statistics, I mean, we know they're a lowball number. They're not really collecting the proper data. We have no data really that I'm aware of on people that actually survived because they were Narcaned. So, and we have no data how many people are walking around with hypoxic brain injuries because they were without oxygen to the brain for so long, but they lived, they survived. But some people are walking around with major issues because of this fentanyl. And we're, I don't know if we're not really tracking that. And if they are, where is the data? Why are they not sharing this with us? We want a COVID-like response. We want the ticker they had for COVID. The world saw what they could do for COVID. We knew every single person that was hospitalized in every hospital. Imagine if they could do that for fentanyl and for patients going in experiencing an overdose, whether they live or die. Get them numbers up. If we had the ticker, that would really be an eye opener to the public, because every day I meet new moms, believe it or not, and there are still so many people that have no idea what illicit fentanyl is. Zero clue. People like me, a lot of people think, oh, everybody knows. That is not true. everybody does not know. And again, it shouldn't be our job to warn the public. This should be coming from our federal government. And, we have written this administration. We just wrote a big letter and we spent $2,000 on this letter. We sent out to President Biden. We sent out to every United States congressman and all the United States senators. And we had 33 other fentanyl nonprofits on board with this letter. Their logos were all on this letter. I've gotten like I had like 3 responses. One response that amounted to something. All the other ones, it was just like nothing. Like, we're being failed. We're really being failed.
So you talk about the Biden administration. How has their open borders policy impacted the trafficking of fentanyl into the United States?
I can't even keep up with the seizures that the DEA reports like every day, or this sheriff's department and this state. It's every state's a border state now. They're making busts everywhere. Border Patrol is always reporting. I mean, I can't even keep up with them. There's so many every day. And when we know they only catch maybe 5 to 10%, that's nothing compared to the drugs that are in here. It's astronomical numbers. It's very for me, it's disturbing. I mean, I say it's demonic. I say it's corruption. There's too many. Follow the money. I mean, there's just too much corruption. You ask yourself, why are they not shutting down China? I mean, I don't know I don't know anything negative that comes from having a secure border. And having a wide open border, the general public, us Americans, the families, we all can see it. When they're flooding all these people through this port of entry, we know what's happening a couple miles down the street. And a sweet and low packet. So to give your audience a visual, take one sweet and low packet, if that were illicit fentanyl, that has the potential to kill 500 people. So I always say, how many sweet and low packets can you fit into a backpack? It's a crisis, and I know it's not just the border. We have the de minimis loophole. So fentanyl is still coming in through the mail along with precursor chemicals. But our government should be doing everything in their power to slow the flow of it into our country. And they're not doing that.
So you keep mentioning the numbers, and I'm just going to go. I saw in 2023, the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, the DEA, seized more than 80 million fentanyl-laced fake pills and nearly 12,000 pounds of fentanyl powder. And that's equivalent to more than 381 million lethal doses of fentanyl. I know this year, the DEA has seized more than 27,900,000 pills and more than 4,017 pounds of fentanyl powder. How do we address this crisis?
Label illicit fentanyl a weapon of mass destruction. Sanction China. Label the Mexican cartels a foreign terrorist organization. There are things they can do. And an easy thing to do is at least warn the public. Warn the families, warn people that run daycare centers, warn our federal government should mandate all schools and even daycare centers now educate on illicit fentanyl and drug poisonings. They need to educate the public so at least they're being warned. That's an easy thing to do. That's not difficult. So we can't even get that. I don't know what's going on. It's up to each individual school. I know there's a couple states that have passed laws where fentanyl education is going to be implemented in their schools. That's wonderful. But why are we fighting so hard to get laws passed? Because I think there's parents in every state fighting tooth and nail to save another family from feeling their pain. Because and this is what I say, we can't even grieve our children. These moms and dads it amazes me. I'll have a member in my group and they're like, my child died a week ago, or my child just died a month ago. I don't even know how they're finding the group. I'm glad they find us. But some of these parents, their kid dies, and a week, 2 weeks later, they're out fighting fentanyl. God bless them. I love them for doing it. But you know what? They're going to crash and burn because they're not able to grieve their children because they're so in fight mode to save someone else from this. It's like, I can't explain it to you. It's like hell. When you lose your kid, because for me, it's been 5.5 years now.
The pain never goes away.
And in the beginning, and I have 2 other kids to live for. I wanted to not be here. I didn't want to be here. And my heart breaks for all these new families. And I have my seatbelt on because I know what's coming today, tomorrow, the next day. The numbers, we know the numbers. We have the CDC numbers. And when you know that's a low ball number, it's a pretty high number. That is disturbing, and it should disturb every single American. Never say not my child. All it takes is one time.
Lost Voices of Fentanyl, you're holding a rally on the mall on Saturday, July 13th. What is the purpose of the rally and what are some of the highlights?
I mean, we have some awesome speakers, which I think are highlights, but a highlight for any parent that has lost a child, it's really to hug and love on one another. There's so many of us in one spot, and to meet all these people in person, and I can't explain the bonding it is for us grieving families. But we have amazing speakers like Tom Homan. He's one of our great speakers. Derek Maltz, who we all love. I mean, we have Jim Raw, he's Families Against Fentanyl. He's a scientist. He talks all about the weapon of mass destruction, and he really breaks it down in a way that no one else can explain it. But if you listen to him, I don't know how anybody can listen to this guy and not say, yes, illicit fentanyl has to be declared a weapon of mass destruction. When you think it's just a couple specks of a chemical and it's killed that many people, I don't understand how it hasn't been labeled that yet. And when you know it's from China, from another country to destabilize America, they're doing a great job of it. Like, something has got to give here. I mean, in 10 years, we're going to turn around and no one's going to be behind me. They're all going to be dead. I mean, going at this rate, this is our youth. If our youth is our future, what are we without our youth? Like, I'm fighting for my grandkids. I'm scared. I'm scared to death. My grandson starts middle school this year, and that's scary to me, considering last year in the state of Virginia, 9 fourth graders were rushed to the emergency room. Why? Because another fourth grader came in and he had candy in a Ziploc bag and he was sharing all his candy. It wasn't the candy that had fentanyl. It was the Ziploc baggie had traces of fentanyl. And then when they went to the home, come to find out, mom and dad were dealing drugs. So you don't know what goes on behind closed doors. So I tell my granddaughter, and this is really sad, I got to tell my granddaughter, who's a third grader, don't swap your peanut butter and jelly for your friend's ham and cheese. Because that's where we're at. And that is very sad. But you can't. And look at what happened at the daycare center in New York. All the babies are dead. All the babies are dead. A woman was screaming. I mean, thank God it was only one baby, but it was one baby too many. They had a pill mill in a daycare center. So this is what's happening in America. Look at the Airbnb in Florida. There was a family that rented out an Airbnb in Florida, to do the Disney experience with their toddler. Well, their toddler died because whoever had the Airbnb before this family, apparently it wasn't cleaned well enough, and there was residue of fentanyl left in the room, and their baby is dead. And this has now become a common story. There's so many babies dead from this. It's just, it's instant death. Instant death.
It's really
Toddlers don't
tragic.
stand a chance.
Yeah, it's tragic. It's beyond tragic. I can share with our listeners that Fair staff will be at the rally on Saturday to support you and Lost Voices of Fentanyl and all of those who have lost loved ones to fentanyl poisoning. And I encourage us, those who can join us to show support, to come to the mall. April, please share where you're going to be on the mall on Saturday.
So we're at the Washington Monument. It's the northeast quadrant, and the cross street is Constitution and 15th. So if you get to that cross street, you'll see us. We have like 47 banner stands on display. So we have almost 100 banners on display. You'll see the stage. You'll see a bunch of tents. You can't miss us. We'll be there right at the corner.
And those banners are pictures of people lost, correct?
Yeah, so Lost Voices of Fentanyl, we're up to 44 victim banners now. We have 56 faces on each banner with their name, their forever age. And then we also have all the Can You See Me Now banners. They have 150 faces on each one of their banners. And I believe we have 33 of their banners. So, and really when I tell people when you look at one banner, you're like, oh my gosh. And I say, no, just look at 6 of them. That's who's dying one day in America. It's really disturbing. Common story, but it's not normal.
I hope it becomes an uncommon story. Do you have any closing thoughts you'd like to share with us?
I mean, I would just like to share, I don't know really how big of a view you got, if you have family members in here with kids, grandkids, and even adult children. 20, 30, 40-year olds, they go out to the bar and they get a beer buzz. Lots of people go to the bar, wind down, get a beer buzz, right? Most people do stupid stuff in their life when they're inebriated. It takes one person. Hey, come do a line of Coke. Hey, you want to pop this pill, make you feel good? All the pills are fake. All the drugs are laced. Like even adults occasionally use drugs. There is no occasional use because they're going to die. We see it every day. Look at what just happened at the Kansas City Chiefs in the playoffs last year. I'm sure your viewers heard that story. It was all over the news, but 3 people were found dead in this guy's yard. They were having a party. They were watching the Kansas City Chiefs game. And oh, it came out all 3 of his friends were dead from fentanyl. They all went out and got a bunch of Coke. They're all dead. This is not normal. Like again, I'm not condoning illicit drug use, but nobody's ever died snorting a line of cocaine, okay? Cocaine is the glorified drug. It's always been a glorified drug. It's shown on TV, HBO, Newsmax, or not Newsmax, Netflix series that I watch. It's still glorified. Like it's not a big deal, but we're losing people every day. Hollywood needs to wake up. The music industry needs to wake up because they rap about it. Hollywood, like I just said, this is not to be glorified. We need to warn the public, warn your kids because it's a pill popping generation. These young kids, they pop these pills. Thank you, Big Pharma, but that's what we're living in today. And that's what these young kids are doing. And if your kids are on Snapchat, remove it from their phone. Nobody should have Snapchat on their phone because I have met and I'm not lying when I say hundreds of moms and dads who have dead kids because their child was on Snapchat. And you don't have to look for drugs on there. The drug dealers will find your kids and they'll deliver it to your house just like a pizza. We call it Uber Eats for drugs.
Yes, the cartels use all that social media to deliver their drugs, and it is
Yeah.
truly scary, and it is so much more addictive. And fentanyl is just
And that's why they
dangerous.
do it. Like I think for the cartels, I don't think they want us to die. I don't think that. I think the cartel, it's money for the cartels. They want the money, they want the money, they want the money, even though they know people are dying, that it's irrelevant. But for China, China is to kill us. If people are not seeing that, they need to watch the China Select Committee hearing. They need to go on the DEA website. They need to research about it because the research is out there. China is deliberately killing us with these chemicals. And it's not just fentanyl, it's the xylazines and the nitazines and all these other crazy synthetic drugs coming straight from their labs to our streets. 0 deaths in China. 0 from illicit fentanyl. 0.
April, thanks so much for joining me today. We're going to see you on Saturday, Lost Voices of Fentanyl rally on the mall. I hope our listeners are going to join us at the rally. Again, 15th Street in Constitution.
Constitution, 9:45 a.m. And we
Well,
have speakers on the mic till 3.
thank you. And I hope your message gets out loud and clear about the dangers of fentanyl and the fact that, these drugs, what they think they're getting are not what they're getting. And I think that's clear from what you've said. And I just hope our listeners take heed
I
to your
hope
warning.
so.
Thank you.